fundamental concepts of drawing, and they apply to art. So I'm gonna, let's see how we do this. I'm gonna just write the word here. So we have one of the concepts as, make it darker, make sure you guys can see it okay. And I want you to go ahead and set it up however you want on your page. But this is going to be important. It's an important concept to grasp and to make sure you have a full understanding of. So we have line. And we may ask the question, what is line? Well, line, we have vertical. We can draw all different types of expressive vertical lines. But there it is, vertical line. We have a horizontal. We have diagonal. And diagonal, you could go 180 degrees and mirror it, so that's 360 degrees. And you will find the horizontal and the vertical along the way. And then we have one more, which is a curve. So you have lines that curve. And there you have it. That is it. Understanding that these are your letters when it comes to speech. These are your symbols. These are your elements, your fundamental elements in line. Now, we have line that turns. And I'm just making sure it's dark enough going over. And it turns into shape. So, notice the combination. Now I'm using a vertical with a horizontal and another vertical with another horizontal. And I just created a shape. And in this case, a rectangular shape. I hope you guys can see that okay. I'm going to take a horizontal and replicate it, make it parallel. Oh gosh. And then just try to make sure the sides are equal. And there's another shape, a square. Now I'm going to take this diagonal. I'm going to mirror it. And then I'm just going to close it out. And now we have a triangle. Now some of you may be way ahead of the curve and go, what if I do a diagonal, another one, and instead of a horizontal, what if I added a curve? Look at that. You have a triangle, and now you have a cone shape. So all the mixing of these lines begins to evolve into the infinity of possibilities. And I'll let you guess what happens here with this curve one. Yep, that's right. A circle. And these are your absolute basic fundamental shapes. They all just come from understanding the combination of lines. What would be the next thing? So you could see how it all begins to take place. It all begins to come together. And some people may say, well, this is way too beginner. But trust me, this is what makes you advanced. Understanding this and using it however your creativity allows you to is what makes the difference. So we have line that becomes shape. We have shapes that now are going to become forms. And what do we mean by developing forms? I'm going to add a diagonal to this rectangle. And now, by making parallel lines and closing them out, it looks like a... In other ways, I'm going to show you one more, which is actually fundamental too. Not to confuse you, but another choice. It would be adding a curve at the top. So you see what happens there. You could turn this into a rectangular box or a cylinder. And the cylinder is the one that would be the basic. Now we take another, in this case, vertical line. And I'm thinking of those basic shapes becoming forms. And how do I do that? Well, I just make sure my lines are parallel. And now what I'm beginning to do is extend them to create the illusion of three-dimensionality. And And it's hard not to, for our brain, not to understand that, oh, wow, look, this actually could be three-dimensional, but I'm just looking at it straight on, flat on the table, eye level. And as soon as I begin to move my perspective, there it is. I see the form. So let's see, how do we turn a triangle into a three-dimensional form? So I could just add another diagonal with a little angle, and there's a pyramid. Now this one's got to be tricky. How do we do this one? Because it's just a flat circle. How would you go about? Well, we have a clue when we look at the planet we're on, and we draw an equator this way, and somewhat of a curved line. Now, the more curve you add to it, the more it's turning towards or against you, and where you choose to place it as well. It means your perspective from it. And there it is. Now, what would come after this? There's a couple of more concepts that you begin to consider once you're here, from line to shape to form. What would be the next one? Well, in a way, I'm just going to touch over it because we don't have too much time to go into it, but you can understand it easily. And that would be value. What does value mean? I'm just going to put it plainly. It means light or dark. So once you begin to apply light, and obviously where there's light, you have shadows. You introduce the concept of, and let's just go ahead and do them over. I'm going to make them really quick so we do it properly. Usually I would just one by one, and since we have the forms here already, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add additional lines, and notice that I'm just adding lines that are closer, more saturated, so it becomes darker. And as I move along the side, I'm just going to space the lines out a little more until they're totally spaced out. And I can also add lines going this direction. So again, I'm using horizontal and vertical lines. I'm also using lighter and darker lines that are closer to each other, more saturated or spaced out, to create look at that. So we go from this guy here, which is still flat, to all of a sudden we get a perception of almost a real object. And we could do this to every single one. I'm going to go ahead and do it quickly. Just playing with the angle of the light. So this one, I'm going to make the light come this way, and I'm going to put a little arrow where the light is coming from. This way and this way. So that means the light is hitting here and here. So this one's going to be medium lights. Medium lines. And this one is opposite. Remember, using saturation of light. Here it feels like, oh, well, he's coloring it in. Now you're painting. No, these are supposed to be all just individual parallel lines to each other that are saturated. And obviously we begin to dive into drawing techniques, different types of lines, different types of mark makings. When you begin to explore the medium, whether it's pencil or ink, and then I'm going to just get a sense of what the shadows are doing, and I just follow that direction with more horizontal or kind of diagonal lines in a way. They begin to just take shape to identify that. Let me go ahead and do the last one here. We could skip the pyramid. It's the same concept, but for this one, when you deal with the sphere, all you got to do is catch one of those lines that we did earlier, that semicircle that divides it, and that's called your terminator. That means the light only reaches, it's definitely coming this way, if this is my shadow area, and I'm just going to, once again, using directional lines, parallel, it gets a little darker, then it gets a little lighter, and then it gets ultralight all the way at the front. And after we do this, you realize, it's all little tricks to create the illusion. Exactly. Exactly what it is. How to manipulate the knowledge of those fundamental ingredients to create something delicious. But all along, it's just recipes, recipes that you get to play with. I think I could do a better job at creating different types of shapes with different types of lines, and then play with the light as well. And that's what we see artists do. Take this very simple formula of fundamentals of art. Now, one last thing. We talk about value here, and as I add light, that includes another one, which would be, inevitably, we're dealing with, space. So we're just inviting it in. Now we have a sense of an object, a form, taking a position in space.